Hello, and welcome to the Project Virtual Conference 2015. This is my session on Project Online BI Made Easy. The aim of the session is to give you an overview of the reporting and BI options that Project Online has to offer, and to show you how quickly and easily you can create reports using the technologies that you have available to you. Those of you that are familiar with Project Online already or using it today will already be aware of these technologies and probably using them already in your organizations. Those of you that haven't had the opportunity to use Project Online yet, or if you're using Project Server on-premise or Microsoft Project Professional or standard desktops, some of these technologies will be new to you. Firstly, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors of the event. Without the support of those organisations, the event wouldn't have been able to take place. So please do take a moment to make a note of the names of the organisations that you see there. So a little bit about myself. My name is Paul Mather. I'm currently a Microsoft PPM Solution Architect at a company called Corporate Project Solutions, mostly known as CPS. We're based near London in the United Kingdom. My role at CPS is to lead the Microsoft PPM delivery. So that involves being an escalation point and driving the PPM team. Also, as part of that, I'm the PS Plus product technical lead. PS Plus is a product that we develop and sell for Microsoft Project Server and also Project Online. Those of you that use Twitter, my username is PW Mather, and anyone that would like to, please do follow my blog. I regularly blog at pwmather.wordpress.com. Also, those of you that are familiar with the Microsoft Project TechNet forums, you may have seen my name crop up a few times there. So what is Project Online? So Project Online is Microsoft's PPM cloud offering for Project Server. So it's the equivalent of Project Server, but is in the cloud. It's within their Office 365 platform alongside products such as SharePoint Online or Exchange Online. The advantages to Project Online is that you don't have to have anybody look after the infrastructure. That's all handled by Microsoft. Also, things like updates, they're rolled out regularly to Project Online. You don't have to worry about arranging for downtime or patches to be applied by your server admins, like you do with Project Server on-premise. Also, changes and updates are also rolled out regularly to Project Online, whereas if you're a Project Server on-prem, typically you have to wait for the next version, whereas that isn't the case for Project Online. So how does Project Online differ to Project Server on-premise in terms of BI and reporting? So with Project Server on-premise, if you're aware, or if you've got Project Server on-premise currently today, you'll know that you have direct access to the SQL reporting database if your SQL DBAs allow that. That enables you to easily create Excel-based reports or SQL Server reporting reports directly off that reporting schema. Also, you have the OLAP cube, the Analysis Services cube, that then enables you to easily create those pivot tables within Excel. So with Project Online, with it being a cloud offering, you don't get direct access to that SQL database for obvious reasons. So what Microsoft have done to get around that is introduced what's known as the OData reporting API. So that's where all of the key reporting information is taken using the OData API, which is just a REST web service effectively. That is permission controlled within the permission model, so not all users will have access to that API. But that enables you to easily create reports in Excel or Power BI, or extract the information out from SYS, or consume that API within JavaScript or any other technology that can consume an OData REST endpoint. So the four technologies or products that I will cover in this session are Excel, Power BI, SYS/CSOM, but really that's probably SYS/SQL Reporting Services. I put CSOM there because the reason why I've got sys there is because you can extract the data out of online into a SQL database using sys, but you could also do the same thing with the client-side object model. And then we'll have a look at JavaScript stroke HTML. Also, we'll have an overview of the actual reporting API and see what that OData API looks like in the browser.
So now we will look at some example reports for those 4 previously technologies that we mentioned, so Excel, Power BI, sys or SQL Reporting Services, and the JavaScript and HTML. So the first one we look at is Excel. This is probably the default reporting technology currently for Project Online. So it's the Excel client, but also you can publish those reports to Excel services and view those reports within the web or within your PWA site collection. So some key points for Excel. Obviously, Excel is a great tool. It's widely used. Many users understand Excel fully. It's a very powerful tool, great for analysing data. One of the key points, as I mentioned previously, is that those reports can be surfaced in PWA very easily using the Excel web app or Excel services feature of Office 365. The data's real time. You can refresh those reports and pull through the latest data that's been published for the project or resources. One thing to note is that by default, things like the HTML markup that you see in multi-line fields is displayed by default, but you can remove that with an add-in for Excel called Power Query that enables you to use some functions and actually strip those out to make the text more readable. Also, another point worth making is some of the data typically on the project site isn't that easy to access. So if you've got a custom SharePoint list, for example, and you want to report across that custom list from multiple project sites, it isn't easy to do in Excel because you need to programmatically build up the URL to get that data. So what we'll do now is we'll jump into an example to look at 2 or 3 example Excel dashboards that I produced for this demo, just so you can see what they look like. So we just switch over to my demo environment now, so if you bear with me. So here are my demo environment that I've created for this session. I've just created a quick landing page just for easy access to the 4 example types of reports that I've created for the session. So the first one that we're going to look at for now is the Excel one. So here we've got 2 example Excel links. I'm just going to open up these if you bear with me. I'll just click both of them just so they both open. So this is opening up the reports in the Excel web app or Excel services. So here it's fully interactive. So here we've got an example report, project dashboard that shows some issue and risk status information, some cost and work and issue count information there. Then we've got some project details in a table here, and then some key sort of milestones or marked tasks there. We've got a slicer here to be able to slice the data through, to filter it through into all of those charts. So if we click on the acquisition target analysis, we'll see that everything will then filter and update for the acquisition target analysis project. And we can filter that down for whatever project we like. On this particular example, we've got another example report on a different sheet. We've got a portfolio report here. So we switch over to this portfolio report. It's another simple example that I've just put together. So there's no filtering here because it just shows information for all of the projects that we've got in the system. So there's a count of projects by phase at the top there. Then we've just got some project cost information. And then we've got a summary RAG information. So it's just showing us how many projects are green for this particular RAG, how many are amber, and how many are red. Then we've got some information about the customers. Customers is just a custom field or some metadata that I've got tagged against this particular project. Then I've got some charts there to show you some numeric information. So I've got 31 projects in the system, and then I've got the portfolio cost as well. So that's one example. I've also got another example here that I'll switch to that's, again, for a program kind of dashboard. So programs, again, just a bit of metadata we've got tagged against the projects in the system. So I can click here and actually filter through and see what the IT program looks like. And then all of my charts and data should actually filter through and show me all of the information for those particular projects that I've got in the IT program. So that's the Excel web app. To edit these, what we would have to do is actually open up those in the Excel client. So if I open up the Excel client here, we'll see that exactly the same reports here with the two sheets for my data there. And then I can edit the workbook and add new charts in, add new pivot tables in, or even add new OData feeds in. I won't go into the details now because towards the end of this session, what I'll actually do is run through creating a new Excel report from a blank workbook. So you'll see exactly how that works there. So that's the end of the Excel demo. So now we're just going to switch back to the PowerPoint slide deck and talk about the next technology, which is Power BI. So now we've seen the Excel demos, we'll now move on to the next technology, which is Power BI. Microsoft Power BI is the latest and greatest reporting technology from Microsoft that exists in Office 365. If you haven't seen it yet or seen any demos of it, then I can't recommend it enough. It is a great, powerful tool. It's very, very simple to use. You can easily create great visualizations of your data. Even though it's easy, it is very, very powerful. You've got many options that are available to the end user. As I say, it's a great way to visualize the data. Within Power BI, you've got report packs, and or report packs, it's actually known as content packs. So you can create a whole set of reports and dashboards for your organization or your department, or even a particular project, for example. And then you can publish that as a content pack and make that available to other people. You can schedule the data refresh. So if you're working with large volumes of data, what you can do within the Power BI options is actually schedule that data refresh. So it's a background task. So users, when they come into that report, they don't have to wait for the data to refresh. They can just look at the data and knowing that it's been refreshed in the background by Power BI or on a scheduled job. Or you can refresh the data source on demand and wait for that to update. But if you are working with large data sets, then that can take a few moments to update. Power BI also includes a Power BI desktop, which is the desktop tool to be able to author new reports. You can author new reports in the web, but some people do like a desktop tool when they're creating and editing sort of documents or reports. Again, like Excel, the HTML markup in multi-line fields is displayed, but you can easily create functions to remove that data using the Power Query language that Power BI uses. So Excel does have the option to use Power Query, and that's the language and the editor that you use for Power BI. It's Power Query. Again, likewise with the Excel option, getting the project site list data for custom lists or custom columns in the issue and risks list isn't that straightforward. So there's two versions of Power BI. One of them is free, and one of them does require an additional license. The one with the additional paid for license gives you access to a lot more features, so it's definitely worth checking those out. So now what we're going to do, we're going to switch over to look at some of the Power BI reports that I put together for the demo and talk about those, and then have a look at how they're created. So if we switch over to my demo, just bear with me. So switching back over to my demo environment now, we'll look at the Power BI example reports and dashboards that I put together. So I'll just open up these if you bear with me. Just gonna let those load, and I'll click the dashboard as well. So that's now loaded my Power BI workspace here. So within the Power BI application, so I'm actually logged on as myself, and this is my own personal workspace. So I can create my own dashboards, my own reports. But you can see here actually this Sales Manager Dynamics, that's actually part of CPS's content pack that we've deployed. So it's got some of the sales reports on there. So I won't click on those. But here you can see this is an example report that I've created. This particular one just shows some project level information. It was actually at the portfolio level because it's got all of the projects on here. I've got different pages. So this first page, we've got some project work information, we've got costs, we've got project owners, Then we've got some counts here of the number of projects in the system, number of issues, number of risks. And then we've got the count of projects by a RAG cost, a RAG work, RAG schedule, and RAG PM status. They're just indicators we've got, or metadata tagged against those particular projects in the system. So if we look at another example here, this is just another example visualization. This is what's known as a tree map, and that's plots the projects based on whatever criteria put in there. But the shapes in this example are plotted based on the percent complete. So the new mobile app is 95% complete, so that's got the biggest segment on the tree map. And as you go down, you can see that the 3D printer development is only 44% complete. So that's a nice way to visualize the projects in your environment. If we look at another example here, we've got a similar type of report that I created in Excel that you saw earlier. So we've got some slicer information here so we can filter the information. Currently it's showing information for all the projects, so you can see we can actually scroll through that particular visualization there, and this one too. But if I select audit tracking, I can see that that's actually pre-filtered all of the issues and risks and cost and work and issues and risks, and the project information now only shows the one row because it's just for the audit tracking project, and then the milestones and marked tasks are only for the particular project we've got selected. We can select multiple, or I can uncheck that and check our acquisition target analysis project, and then you can see the information all filters through there. On 4, we've got another example report here, but this particular one is just to give you the demonstration of the drill down capability. So here we've got the cost information rolled up to the project level, and we've actually got it pre-filtered to the IT program. But what we can do here, we've got the drop down there. I can actually click on that to turn on drill down. So if I'm interested to see what particular tasks are making up the total cost for a particular project, I can then click on a particular project here, and we can see it drills down and shows me the cost of those tasks within that project. I can then drill back up and go into the audit tracking project, so I can see all of the tasks there and the cost for each of those tasks. So that's just some example visualizations that you get with Power BI, and just some examples I've created just to visualize some of that data I've got in my example environment. And then what you can do, you can actually pin these visualizations to dashboards. So I can select, if I select this particular one, for example, I can pin it to a dashboard, and I can choose the dashboard because I've got 2 there, but I'll pin it to an existing dashboard and I'll leave it to the default Project Online BI. So if I pin that, that's told me that it's been successfully pinned to my dashboard. So here, if I just switch to the dashboard, I need to refresh the page to see that visualization appear. And then we've got the visualization there at the bottom. So here I've just pinned other visualizations from other reports, and I can get a nice overview dashboard to show me information about my portfolio or my projects that I've got. So what's also quite nice with Power BI is the natural language query. So we've got this field or text box at the top that asks a question about the data on the dashboard. So I can type something like count of risks by project. If I could type project name, you can see it auto completes, and actually I'm happy with just project name. So if I hit return, and I can see all of the projects in the system that have got risks, and a count of those risks. So you can see audit tracking's got 4, acquisition target analysis has 5, etc. And then what we can do, you see in the right hand pane, we've got the option to actually change the visualization. So by default, it's shown that particular style of bar chart. But if I want to, I can change it to a different visualization, or I can change it to that tree map that we saw earlier, or I can see a card multi-row card, or I can see it as a table. So I can click through and just see what visualization I'd like to display. So if we leave it as that one's the default one for now, and then what I can do, I can pin that to my dashboard. Again, it's going to give me the option to choose which dashboard I want to pin that to. So if I pin that, and then go back to my dashboard, if I scroll down, I'll see I've got my new visualization there. And if I click on that, it takes me back to the query that I asked of the data set, and I can update the visualization if I want to. I can change it, or we'll switch back to the dashboard. So clicking on any of these visualizations, it will actually take you to, if the visualization has been loaded from a report, it will take you to that particular report. So that one again was a question that I asked of the data set. If I click on this one, that will actually take me to one of those example reports that I showed you earlier. So that's the examples I put together. As I mentioned earlier, you can create the reports directly and the dashboards directly in the web application. So if I click on this data set down here, I get the canvas here to be able to add in other data. So if I click name, I can see the project name. So we've got work. So I can see work. You can quickly add in any of the metadata or the properties, sorry, that you have available based on what OData feed you've added into the report or the data set. And then you can change all of the visualizations and play around until you're happy with some of the visualizations. So that can all be done in the web, as you can see there. We'll go into more detail towards the end of the session. Like with the Excel version, I'll actually go through creating a new Power BI report from a blank report using the desktop designer, which you'll see here. So this is the desktop designer. It's a desktop application. It looks very similar to the web canvas that we can see here. So the next technology that we'll talk about will be the SIS, or SQL Integration Services, and SQL Reporting Services. So we'll just switch back to the presentation. So now we'll take a look at the Project Online BI options for SQL Integration Services, or CSOM. So SIS, SQL Integration Services, is a feature of Microsoft SQL Server. CSOM is just the client-side object model, the .NET object model for Project Online. The reason why I've got both of those options on there is because this option is all about extracting the data out from Project Online into another data source. That could be SQL Server, for example. The advantage to doing that is that once you've got the project data into a SQL database, you can then easily create sort of a data warehouse and integrate data and join up the data with other business systems in your organization. And you've also then got the flexibility of using other reporting technologies such as SQL reporting services. Once you've got it in SQL database, then you can easily build in snapshotting or trending, because you can make copies of that data or those tables into snapshot tables and then do all sorts of trend reporting off that data. With SQL Integration Services and CSOM, you can schedule the refresh of that data, so it can be on a SQL job, or you can call it from a Windows scheduled task. Or if you're using CSOM, you could even make it event-driven, so you could create a replica real-time reporting database for Project Online, but in SQL, so you've got full access to that data at the SQL level. The advantage to using something like SIS, you can also transform some of that data. So things like the HTML markup that we saw previously with Excel and Power BI, when you're looking at the OData API, you see those tags there, so you have to remove those out. So we can programmatically remove those out with SIS, or depending on the reporting technology, such as SQL Reporting Services, you can actually render that HTML rather than seeing the tags that will render it. Part of this process, because it's coded, you can easily extract information from those custom project site SharePoint lists across projects and create those cross-project reports for like a lessons learned report or a change request report or if you've got custom columns on your issues and risks list, for example, you can easily report across those because we can extract that data out quite easily with SIS or CSOM. The downside of this approach, it would require another server because you'd need SQL Server installing somewhere. So that would either be a machine in your data center, or you could have a VM running in Azure, because then it's all still hosted within the cloud. Another downside is obviously you would need coding skills to be able to do this. The example I put together uses SIS, so it extracts some data out and puts it into a SQL database that I've got on one of my VMs in the office. So what we'll do now is we'll just switch over to the demo and take a look at the report that I put together off of the extracted Project Online information, and then take a quick look at the SQL Integration Services package and just talk through what that does. So back on the demo instance, the third option that we're looking at is this SIS or SQL Reporting Services option. So I've created an example report off of some Project Online data and surfaced that in SQL Reporting Services. So here we've got parameter and SQL Reporting Services, and program is just some metadata that I've got tagged against the fields, the project, sorry. So I'll select that, and then I've got the ability to select some projects. In this case, I'll select my acquisition target analysis because that's a favorite one to demo, audit tracking, and then we've got an Office 2016 rollout prep. So I'll select my projects, and then I'll hit view report. What this is going to load is an example status or highlight report for that particular project. So it's a per project report built in SQL Reporting Services, and we've got some key project level information at the top with some rags here, then some descriptive information here with some summary information, and then we've got key milestones for this month and future, and then we've got some issue information and some risk information. That's for the acquisition target. I can then press to the next page and look at the same information for the audit tracking, and then do the same thing for my Office 2016 rollout prep. SQL Reporting Services is a great technology as well, very flexible. It's basically a blank canvas. You can add custom code to it, you can do all sorts. But as mentioned on the slide we just looked at, it does require some coding skills. But once it's there, you've then got the ability to export those reports out into different formats, PDF, Word, Excel. Typically, you design a report to be exported out to one of those formats. So if it was Excel or Word, the report would be designed around that. So that is actually looking at extracted data from my Project Online demo tenant. And to get that information there, I've extracted it out using SQL Integration Services. So if I just log on to one of my VMs, and we can just have a quick look at that package. So here we've got the package. It's very simple. This particular one is just an example. So if this was actually production, it'd be a lot more complex than this because you'd have all sorts of error handling, and you'd, rather than just copying down everything, you would get it to copy down just the differences. There's a great article from Microsoft on MSDN with an example SIS package on extracting the Project Online data. So if that's something you wanted to do, I do recommend taking a look at that. If you just put into Bing and have a search for Project Online SQL Integration Services, it will be returned. So we've got different components on here. The first one, we're looking at the project speed, and then we're telling it to put it into a SQL table, doing the same for tasks, issues, and risks. In this example, I've just extracted those 4 endpoints. So just the project data, the task data, the issues data, and the risks data. And that just comes from the default Project OData API. And when that runs, what that does is creates the data in my custom table. So I've got a custom database table here. Just for the benefit of this presentation here, I've just done a quick select to show you that data is coming from those tables. So you can see it's just stored in SQL. So that's it for the SIS or SQL Reporting Services demo. But now we'll look at the next option. So we'll just switch back to the PowerPoint slides and look at the HTML or JavaScript technology. So JavaScript and HTML, so that's an option for reporting. There's some JSON or JavaScript REST APIs, as well as the project data API to be able to get data out and manipulate data and also update data. So that the REST API and also JSON does allow you to interact with some of those project properties and modify your data via JavaScript. One of the advantages of creating the JavaScript or HTML report is that it's just on a page, so it can easily be added to a page within PWA. You can just add some code in via a content editor web part, for example, so you could store your files in a document library within the PWA site and then just reference that HTML or JavaScript file via a content editor web part on a new web part page within PWA. So it's basically a blank canvas. It's very, very flexible. Obviously, you do need to understand the code, JavaScript and HTML and CSS to be able to create these types of reports. The data is real time because it's just using the APIs. We don't have to wait for any data to be updated. It will refresh on the page when you click on things because it will just make calls to those APIs. Because we're doing the coding, we can manipulate that data and transform that data anyhow we like. We can strip out certain properties or strings from the data and properties that are returned, or we can choose to render it. Getting that custom project site SharePoint list for projects is very easy because we can programmatically build up that URL to go to those list REST APIs. As mentioned, the reports can be surfaced very easily in PWA, or you can create an add-in using the SharePoint add-in model for Project Online or SharePoint. You can also build in the capability to add in snapshot or trending and store that information maybe in a SharePoint list and then read that information back out. Obviously, the downside is that it would need a developer who knew JavaScript or HTML and CSS to be able to do this type of report. So I have put together an example kind of project status highlight report for this demo, and I'm not a developer. I know a bit of JavaScript and HTML, but so the example I put together is very simple. It probably took me about 15-20 minutes or so to actually create. So what we'll do now is jump over to our demo environment again and take a look at that example JavaScript or HTML report. So back to our demo environment, looking at the final walkthrough or demo of the four technologies that we looked at today is the HTML and JavaScript version. So I've got the report that I created, and also I've got an example SharePoint add-in that is a reporting add-in that is HTML, JavaScript, jQuery. So I'll show you both examples. So firstly, we'll take a look at the example JavaScript sort of highlight status report that I created for this conference session. So here we've got a filter at the top that's a list of projects. This list of projects is actually security trimmed. So if I logged in as a team member, I would only see the same projects that I see in the project center. So this particular filter is security trimmed. But I'm an admin, so I can actually see everything. So if I choose one of our favorite demo projects, if we click on the audit tracking, so we're going off getting the data, we can see we've got some project level information here, we've got some rags displaying, luckily the project's within baseline, schedule's not looking great, it's slipped. Then we've got some milestones here for this particular project, and then we've got some active issues and risks, and I've also got a benefits table, but this particular project doesn't have any information on the benefits list. But if I switch to a project that does, to show you that does actually work, go to Office 2016 rollout prep project. It's going off getting the data from those APIs, and then we can see got the project level information here, active issues and risks. We can see look, there's HTML being rendered there, so we can see it's actually rendering that the blue font. And our ordered lists or unordered lists, even with the bullet points. And also we've got the benefits information. So that's a custom list on the Office 2016 rollout project site, but I can easily get that information via JavaScript and display that on the page. And then in this example, I've got the ability to print it, so I can print that out and save that as my report. So that's the example one that I created. I'll just show you an example reporting SharePoint add-in that we've got. This is actually part of the PS Plus application that I mentioned in the introductions. So here we've got a standard set of reports. I'll just show you one of them. I'll just show you the highlight reports here. So if I load the highlight report, this will look very similar to the SQL reporting services report that we saw earlier, because that's what it was based on. So we've got a program filter. So again, I'll select all. And these are all permission controlled as well, so security trimmed. I can only see the projects that I'm supposed to. So if I uncheck those and just check audit tracking and acquisition target analysis and click apply, that will go off and get the latest information. And you can see here very similar layout to the SQL reporting services report that we created, but this is HTML and JavaScript and CSS, so it's on the page. And you can then create web parts and put these onto PDP, so it pre-filters for that particular project. But that would require quite a lot of custom development, and you would need a developer that knew the SharePoint APIs and JavaScript and the SharePoint add-in model. So that's the end of the demo for JavaScript and all of the 4 technologies that we are looking at. So what we're looking into next is go into the reporting API and just take a look at that in the browser and just show you what that looks like and sort of some best practices around the Project0 data API, how you access it, just a quick intro onto that. So we'll just switch over to that now. So all of the reports that we've looked at in the session today all consume the core reporting API, and that's the project data API, the Project0 data API. And what that does, that surfaces information out of the reporting schema for Project Online. So it's the similar access that you've got if you've got Project Server on premise with a reporting database. This is just a web service or an OData service, an open data protocol service to extract that information out or read that information. It's accessed within the browser quite easily, or within code, or within Excel, or within Power BI. So there's quite a few tools and reporting tools that can consume OData APIs. We'll jump into a demo after this and actually look at the API and see what that looks like in IE in the browser. And all you do is you just append /_API/project data, and you go to the root OData API there. There's many different properties or endpoints available within there, so you can look at tasks, you can look at projects, you can look at project baselines, you can look at assignment information, you can look at task information, you can look at the new engagements feature that's got its own endpoint to pull through that information. It's always best practice to try and filter the data at source as much as possible. So you wouldn't want to pull through everything if you're only interested in seeing the project name and the project owner, for example. All you do is go directly to the project endpoint and do a select on project name and project owner and just pull back those properties. So you minimize the amount of data that's being pulled down. And then your report's going to refresh a lot quicker, and it's a much better user experience. Similarly, if it's only a certain subset of projects that you want to pull down, you might only want to see projects that are 100% complete. Add a filter onto that query so that you filter the data set as well as only pulling back the properties that you want to see, and that will improve performance greatly. Certainly on the time-phased data sets where large amounts of data are contained, that's very, very important to make sure that you do filter that data set at the source to improve the end user experience. Whenever I'm creating new reports, whether it's in Excel or SSRS or Power BI or even a JavaScript, I'll normally create the URLs that I need to get that data. I'll actually test those in IE first to look at the data that's returned to make sure that I'm happy with that data. So what we'll do now is we'll just switch into IE and just take a look at some examples. So the examples that I've got, I've actually already typed out in Notepad just to save time. So let's talk through these. So the first one is the root OData API. So you can see all I need to do is append /API/project data. So if I grab that and paste that in, I'll see all of the different endpoints that are available. So we've got projects, we've got assignment baselines, we've got risks, we've got issues, we've got timesheets, we've got business drivers for the portfolio strategy functionality, we've got engagements. So that's the root level. But what we can do then is if I append $metadata, we can actually see all of the properties that are available for each of those endpoints. So for example, in the projects feed, we've got all of these different properties. We've got project ID, we've got cost information, we've got the owner name, all the properties that you need for reporting purposes. And that will also include all of your custom fields as well. So if we look down the bottom here, you'll see that we've got some of those custom fields that you saw in those reports. We've got program, we've got some of those RAG fields there. We've got some of the phase information, some of that metadata, actions, changes. And if you scroll down, you'll see the properties available for all of those endpoints. So you can easily see what properties you need for your reports and create your queries efficiently. So if we take a look at and how you would optimize or make a query efficient, we'll look at the next query. And what we've done here is added on the filter query to the URL. And here, this is actually filtering for project type is not equal 7, because in Project Server and Project Online, the project type of 7 is actually a timesheet row. So we don't want to see that when we're looking at project information. So if I grab that one and paste that into my URL in my browser, I'll see that it's pulled through information. Because I've already used this, it's actually added on a select statement, which I don't want for this particular example. So if I just return that, I'll see that it's actually pulled through all of the properties, but it won't include the timesheet row. So we've got all properties, so that's for one project, that's for another project, and we keep scrolling through. So we've got quite a lot of data returned there. But in my reports, I'm not actually interested in all of those properties. So for this example, I'm just going to update it and add a select query on there. So we've got filter project type not equal to 7, because we don't want to see that timesheet row. And then we're doing a select, and I'm only going to pull back the project ID, project name, and project work. So if I paste that into IE, it's done it again. But you can see there, it's got some other properties in there because I've looked at that particular API previously, and IE has just included the other properties. So if I just delete that and press return, I can see I've just got those 3 properties that I've requested from there. So that's the OData API. As I say, definitely minimize the amount of data you're putting down whenever you're creating reports, and test them in the browser before you do create the reports. So what we're going to do now is actually jump into create some of those reports using Excel and Power BI. So if we look at creating the report in Excel first, we're just going to create a simple report just that's got 2 feeds in there, just to show you how you create the reports and create the relationships and drop the pivot tables on there. So if we load Excel, we've got a blank workbook open already. So the first thing I need to do is actually add in the OData connection. So I'm going to click on the Data tab, from Other Sources, from OData feed, and in there I need to put in the URL for the OData feed. So what I'm actually going to do is cut and paste the URL that I need, that I've already pre-typed and tested in IE. Click Next, and you can see down here it's actually loading in the data model. Selected the table. I've only selected one table because I've gone directly to the project endpoint. Click Next. I can change the description and the friendly name if I wanted to, but for this example I won't. So I'm going to finish that. It already exists. Hit Yes. At this point I'm just going to create the connection. I'm not going to create a table or anything like that. I just want the connection to be available. So click OK. And it's going to retrieve the data from that projects feed. Then I need to add in the other feeds. We're only going to add in one more example for this, and that will just be the issues feed. So I'm just going to copy and paste the URL that's been previously tested, paste that in. So I've got the select statement on there and pulling back the properties that we want. Click Issues, click Next. I can, as I say, I can change the description and the friendly name there if I wanted to. Finish. I'm only going to create the connection at this stage. Okay, so that's pulled through the data. So the first thing I need to do is actually create the relationship between those two tables. So we've got the relationships button here on the data tab. I'll hit New Table. So issues, we need to choose the key, and it's going to be the project ID to the projects table, and it automatically detects that the unique key is project ID. So click OK to that. That's created the relationship. So there's that join. So relationship, think of that as like a SQL join, to join those two tables together. So if we close that, first thing I'm going to do is insert a slicer. I need to choose the data model, my two tables here. I'm going to have a project name slicer, so I choose project name. Put that in the top corner there for now. I'm not going to spend too long in making this look nice, but it's just to give you an idea of how you get the data into Excel. So then what I'm going to do is create a chart and choose the data. Again, same as the slicer, choose my tables, place my chart up here, and I need to choose what properties I want to display on that chart. So if we expand that, we're going to have status, and then we're going to add issue ID. I'm going to change the chart type and change that to a pie chart in this example. So we've got a pie chart, so we can see that we've got all of the issues there by status. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to add just a simple pivot table on there. Just at the bottom there, again, we choose external data source, choose connection, tables, choose our data model, click OK, and we've got the pivot table. So name the pivot table if this was a real report. But here I'm just going to add in the project name, I'll add in the enterprise project type, I'm going to add in owner, etc. So that's got all the information. Don't like the look of that table, so we're actually going to change the design and change the layout, change it to a tabular form. I don't like these subtotals, so I'm going to remove those as well. And then move everything around a bit. So we've got a simple chart there. At the moment, this slicer doesn't do anything because it's not linked. So you need to click the slicer, and then you get the slicer options, report connections, and we need to connect it to our chart and our table. And then we can see that the data will filter. So we've got the audit tracking there, acquisition target analysis. Where's our other demo for the Office 2016 project, which isn't there at the moment, but you get the idea. And then you can add in other data tables or charts and change the layout, change the design of the pivot table if you wanted to, and make it look as pretty as you like. So that's the Excel one. And then once you're happy with that, you would save that as a file or save it directly to a document library within PWA, or save it locally and then upload it manually to the document library in PWA. And then that would render in Excel web app and update within the web. So that's the Excel one. The next one we will look at will be Power BI. So I've loaded the Power BI desktop application for this demo. So the first thing we need to do is, similar to Excel, we need to actually get the data and make it available to Power BI. And we do that by clicking on the Get Data button here, and we've got OData Feed. So we'll wait for that to load, and then we put the URL in. In this case, again, I'm just going to copy and paste the URL that I've previously typed. I've specifically not put any select statements on there because Power BI is great. It will enable you to actually choose the columns when it actually imports, which you'll see shortly. So all we've done is filter the data because I don't want that timesheet row in there. So if I click OK, and then this will go off on authenticate, and I'll have to put in some credentials. So that's loading. I could just click load there, but I don't want to because that's going to pull through all of the properties and related tables. So I'm actually going to click the edit button. And that loads the query editor. Hit refresh. So it's just pulling through the latest data. And you even get prompted here to actually reduce the number of columns, and it states that it will be faster. So it's going to be more efficient. So I want to do that. So I'm going to click the choose columns. And I'll deselect all of the columns. So I'm going to have project ID in there. I probably want project name, if I can type. So we have project name. We'll also have project work. We'll have project cost. And we'll have the cost variance, project. So project work variance as well, and then we'll have the project owner name. And then we'll click OK. And then all we've got is the columns that we're interested in. And what's really useful within Power BI or actually Power Query, it gives you the steps that it's actually taken. So we can either switch back and delete that particular step, or so we can go back to all of the columns, or we can switch back to our applied step where we've removed the columns. I'm also going to give this a name and call it projects. Okay, that's as far as I'm going to go with the transformation, but you can see here we've got many options to actually transform the data. We can replace values, replace errors. So in the PowerPoint slides I mentioned about the HTML markup. you could easily replace those values using the replace function, which is just that button there. You'd select the column, click replace, and then type the string that you want to replace. So now we need to add in our second feed, and this time we're just going to pull through the issues API like we did for the Excel example. I'll click OK to that. So that's loaded. OK. I'll refresh it again. So that's refreshed. First thing I'm going to do is call it issues. Apply that. And then I want to remove the columns because we can see here it's actually got a lot of data that potentially I'm not interested in. And for this example, I don't need all of those properties. So I'm going to choose columns. Deselect. We'll have project ID. We'll have issue ID, title, status, category. We'll just go with those properties for now. Click OK. We can see that it's updating, and that's got our data. For this example, that's as far as we're going to go, but you can see with Power Query, there's lots of things we can do through the buttons we've got available on the menus, but also you do have access to the advanced editor. So you can type the queries. Once you get familiar with the language that Power Query uses, it's sometimes quicker to actually go there and type the code yourself, but you don't need to do that to start with. You can do pretty much everything you need to using the functions you've got in the editor itself. So at that point, I'm happy I've got my two efficient data sets with the data that I need. So now I need to actually close that. I'm going to click close and apply. And then we'll see that it's getting the data, creating the connections. And what this will also do for us is actually create the relationship automatically. It will look for in the data set and see what properties are unique and actually create a relationship for you. So if you click on the relationships button in the left hand side, we can see here that it's actually automatically joined those two tables up based on the project ID. So you don't actually have to do anything. If you have more data sets, it will still do the same thing. It will still look for unique keys between all the tables, but it's definitely worth checking the relationship page to make sure that those relationships are actually set right. So we switch back to our blank canvas, and now we can just add in whatever visualizations we like. So we do a similar design that we did in Excel. So we'll add in project name, and I want to make that a slicer. So all I've done is clicked in the visualization toolbar and made that into a slicer. And now I'm going to add in another table, and we're going to display some project information. So maybe project name, project owner, work, cost. So you can see here we've got just a standard table, but we can change the visualization. Oh, I'll just delete that. So I clicked on the wrong place. So I'll click here, and I can change the visualization. I can change it to a card or a table. For this example, we'll leave it as just a table. Let me just move it down a bit and give a bit more space for our slicer or our filter. And now we're adding some information about the issues. So we'll add an issues. We'll add a pie chart on here. So if we click pie chart, and then what we want to do is plot the status and count of those. So we're going to add the status into the legend, and then the values we just add in the ID, just so we've got a number that we can count. And I'm just going to drag that over there. With Power BI, you don't actually need to link the filter. So at the moment that's showing everything, whereas in Excel I had to link that slicer and create the connections to my other charts on the Excel sheet. But if I select audit tracking, that automatically filters down to show me the data for audit tracking or the agile project development. I click that, and again it's multi-select, so I can quickly add in different projects. So that's a really quick and simple Power BI report. What you then do is then publish that, and I publish it to Power BI. And yes, I'm going to give it a name, and I'm just going to call it demo example. And it's going to publish that report to Power BI. And I'll click open. And then there's my report there, as it is in the canvas. And you also get another data set here, so we can see I can then go and create another report based on the same data set. So I can click project name, card, etc. So it's very, very powerful. Here you've got the options to schedule the refresh or refresh on demand. If you schedule the refresh, don't save that. You need to then enter the credentials for those data sources. You just put in the normal credentials used to log into the tenant, and that's it. So that's Power BI in a nutshell. Very, very quick intro. I'd highly recommend having a look at Power BI. Certainly if you've got projects online or anything in Office 365, it is a great tool. Even if you've got other data, SQL data on-prem or something, or somewhere else, you can use the gateway for Power BI to bring that data in and make use of Power BI. So that's Power BI, and that's come to the end of the demo there. So now if there are any questions or queries about any of the reports or the technologies that we've discussed in the session, please do feel free to ask. Alternatively, please feel free to contact me either at that email address there, my CPS email address, or on Twitter, or via my blog. Thank you for listening.